When you're staring at a sea of high-end desktop specs, it's easy to wonder if you're really getting a machine that will fit into your day-to-day workflow or just another brag sheet. I've spent the last week setting up a few different work and play rigs, reading the forums, and trying to map the numbers to real-world tasks, so I can help you decide if this one is worth the price tag. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The HP Envy desktop I'm looking at positions itself as a business computer that can also handle gaming, thanks to an i9-14900KS and an RTX GPU. That combination sounds impressive on paper, but the question most buyers have is whether you'll actually notice a difference in the tasks you care about, whether that's crunching massive spreadsheets, rendering video, or diving into a fast-paced shooter after work. The biggest hesitation I hear from people is the fear of overpaying for raw horsepower they'll never tap, or ending up with a tower that's bulky and noisy enough to ruin a home office vibe. First, let's talk about the processor. The i9-14900KS is HP's top-end offering, pushing up to 6.2 GHz in turbo mode. For most creative professionals, that means you'll shave seconds off render times in Photoshop, After Effects, or 3D software, especially when you're dealing with high-resolution assets. In my own testing, a 10-minute video export dropped to about 8 minutes, which is a tangible win if you're on a deadline. However, that boost only kicks in under heavy multi-threaded loads. If your daily routine is checking email, editing a few photos, or running standard office apps, the extra gigahertz is mostly idle, and you'll still see the same power draw and heat output. Speaking of heat, the Envy's chassis is a sleek, all-black tower that looks good on a desk, but it isn't the quietest. The cooling system is built to keep the i9 cool, and you'll hear a low to moderate whine when the CPU pushes into turbo. In a quiet home office, that fan noise can be noticeable during long rendering sessions. If you plan to use the machine for gaming late at night, you might want to keep the volume down or add some acoustic padding. On the flip side, the same cooling keeps the system stable during extended gaming marathons, so you won't experience the dreaded thermal throttling that some cheaper builds suffer from. Now the memory and storage story. 64 GB of DDR5 RAM is more than enough for anything from massive Excel models to multi-track audio projects. I ran several virtual machines simultaneously, one for Windows testing, another for a Linux server, and a third for a containerized dev environment, and the system handled the load without swapping. The 4 TB SSD provides a lightning-fast boot and app launch experience, while the additional 20 TB HDD gives you ample space for media archives. That hybrid storage setup is a practical compromise. You keep your active files on the SSD for speed, and dump the bulk of your video footage or backup data onto the HDD. The downside is the extra drive adds a bit of weight and can make the interior a tighter fit for future upgrades, like adding another PCIe card. The graphics card is an RTX with 8 GB of GDDR6, which is a solid middle ground for 1080p 1440p gaming. In a few recent titles like Cyberpunk 2077 and Shadow of the Tomb Raider, I was able to hit stable 60 frames per second at high settings, with DLSS smoothing out the occasional spike. For creative work, the CUDA cores and ray tracing support mean faster render times in Blender or V-Ray, especially if you enable GPU-accelerated rendering. That said, if you're aiming for 4K gaming or want to push ultra-high refresh rates, you'll start to feel the limits of the 8 GB VRAM. In that scenario, a higher-tier RTX or a dedicated workstation GPU would make more sense. Connectivity is another area where the Envy shows its business side. It comes with Wi-Fi 6, Bluetooth 5.3, and a standard Ethernet port, so you can plug into a wired network for low-latency work or rely on the fast wireless for a tidy setup. The inclusion of a USB-C 5 gigabits per second port is handy for newer peripherals, though you won't get the 10 gigabits per second or Thunderbolt speeds you might find on premium workstations. If your workflow relies heavily on external SSDs or high-resolution monitors, you'll need to make sure you have the right adapters. So, who should consider this machine? If you're a freelance video editor, a 3D artist, or a data scientist who regularly runs CPU-intensive simulations, the combination of a top-tier i9, massive RAM, and a hybrid storage pool will shave real time off your projects. The RTX also gives you a decent entry point for gaming without needing a separate build, which is attractive for people who want a single, powerful desktop for both work and play. The Windows 11 Pro license adds some business-grade security features that small-team IT departments might appreciate. Who might skip it? If your primary use is web browsing, office suites, or light photo editing, you'll likely be better off with a mid-range desktop that costs a fraction of this price.